Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Kelsey Doom. I'm the president and CEO at the Brookings Area Chamber of Commerce, and we are here with you with our District 7 House of Representative candidates. This is the last of our 3 forums that we're putting on. All of the forums are available on YouTube on the Brookings Area Chamber of Commerce channel. So if you missed the District 4 Senate and House or the County Commission, be sure you head over there and check them out. Some really good conversations happening. Without further ado, that's all I've got. I'm going to hand it over to moderator Don Norton, who is the CEO at the South Dakota Ag and Rural Leadership Program. Don?
Well, thank you very much, Kelsey. Good late afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be the moderator for this program. We're featuring state representative candidates from District 7, which encompasses, well, certainly the city of Brookings. The candidates with us on the program are incumbent Republican Tim Reed, Republican Larry Tiedemann, who defeated the incumbent in the primary, Democratic candidates Louise Snodgrass, and Democratic candidate Bill Adamson. Now, on November 3rd, voters will select 2 of these 4 candidates to serve in the legislature for a 2-year term. There's a maximum of 4 consecutive terms or 8 years under the term limits in South Dakota. I should add that voting is underway right now before Election Day, Monday through Friday, and you can vote through Monday, November 2nd, before Election Day on November 3rd. Well, welcome to our candidates and to those joining us live on the webinar. The program is also being made available through the Chamber of Commerce via recording for watching at a later date, as Kelsey said. We're going to demonstrate to America that civil discourse is alive and well, and we're able to carry it off in Brookings, South Dakota. At this time, I'd like the candidates to take 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. Please tell us about your career and why you would like to serve in public office or continue serving. And let's start with our incumbent candidate, Tim Reed. Good evening.
Well, good evening, Don, and good evening, everyone that's Zooming in for this forum. Different times that we're not meeting in person, but I think this will work pretty well. Big thank you to the Chamber for putting this event on. These forums are very important for people to be able to make their choice on who they vote for. I always introduce myself as a Bobcat and a Jackrabbit. I've been living in Brookings all my life. My wife and I, Mary, raised 2 children here in Brookings. I graduated from SDSU with an economics degree, and I've spent 17 years in public service. I spent 8 years as mayor of Brookings, and I've also spent 2 terms as a legislator. Before that, I worked out at 3M. That was one of my first jobs here in Brookings. I also did some work for a software company called i2 Technologies, traveled all around the country. And then I spent a lot of time working at the SDSU Foundation, where I was development director for the College of Engineering. In the legislature, the things I've been involved with is a local government, really working on transparency with local government, something I promoted while I was mayor. Things for SDSU, like bioprocessing, been working on. Then I also work quite a bit with sexual assault bills, helping victims get justice. And then access to mental health care. I was the chair of a task force last summer, working on the community's response to mental health care. So with that, I'm really looking forward to talking tonight about my 17 years of experience and what we can accomplish for South Dakota.
Very good. Let's move on to Louise Snodgrass. Louise, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Louise Snodgrass. I was born in Pierre, South Dakota, and I've lived in Brookings for the last 13 years of my life. I've worked with various small businesses here in the Brookings area. Currently, I am the manager of the Brookings Farmers Market. I work with the Carrot Seed Kitchen, and I also work for Good Roots Farm and Gardens, which is an agritourism farm a little bit out of town. I also dedicate a lot of my hours to public service here in the community. I'm on quite a bit of different volunteer boards throughout the community, and I volunteer during my free time as well with direct service volunteership. And I'm running for office because my community asked me for my representation and my voice to amplify.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to call now on Larry Tiedemann. Larry, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Don, and thank you, Kelsey and the Chamber for helping organize this forum. I was born in South Dakota, raised on a small farm just south of Baltic, South Dakota, attended high school there, graduated, and then came to SDSU and majored in dairy science, received my bachelor's degree, and also commissioned a second lieutenant. I went on and finished my master's degree in dairy nutrition And then I went and continued to serve the state of South Dakota, working for the South Dakota Cooperative Extension Service and SDSU. I worked with them for 33 years, working first in a county position, later as a middle manager, as program leader for Ag and Natural Resources, and the last 6 years as the director of extension, where I really had about 240 people that were concerned about their jobs, and it was my job to represent them. I feel that that was excellent training for my service in the legislature, because I learned how to develop programs based on what were people's needs, not just their wants. I also feel that my 14 years in the legislature positioned me well to bring my knowledge back to the legislature and help us during these challenging times. I feel like I was asked by a number of people, both current legislators out in Pierre as well as people from Brookings, asked me to come back and help through these troubled times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now let's hear from Bill Adamson. Bill, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Don, for putting this forum on, and I also appreciate the efforts of the Chamber of putting on the forum. I've been a resident of South Dakota for 34 years. I grew up in Eastern Washington. It's on the Idaho border. It's in the very productive wheat producing region of the state of Washington. I'm married to Gina. We have 2 daughters and 6 grandchildren. I graduated from Washington State University with a PhD in economics, and I moved to Brookings to accept the position as a professor in the Department of Economics at South Dakota State University. I retired in 2007. Why I'm running, I've been approached by a number of community members that suggested I run, and I have a good background in economics. I think that I can bring a lot of economic knowledge to the legislature and help decide good policy for the state of South Dakota, policies that will ensure strong economic growth and job growth, so we can retain our younger South Dakotans, keep them from moving outside of the state. And that would be my main objective is to make sure that we have a very strong economy and run the government very efficiently.
Well, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone keeping their comments under 2 minutes. We're off to a great start. Well, let me begin with our first question. Once again, 2 minutes to respond. The city of Brookings has been called the most locked down city in the state regarding the COVID-19 precautions. As we heard again just earlier this week, business owners indicate mask mandates and occupancy limits are having a profound economic impact on businesses. In your opinion, has the city made correct decisions in its COVID mandates? And what could the legislature or the governor have done differently or should have done differently? Let me start with Tim Reed.
Thank you, Don. Well, I think the first thing to talk about with the city of Brookings is I believe in local control. And so I believe it comes down to the community on how they want the reaction to something like this, what they want for any kind of mandate for masks. I believe in the mask mandate. I think they've made the right decision. You know, we've seen the growth in the number of cases recently. And so I don't think it's the time that we can, decrease what's being done. Now, that being said, it's tough on businesses, and we have to find that right balance of how can we make sure that we are doing the best job we possibly can for people so we don't have the spread, and also still keep businesses going, because there is a definite advantage for a business like Walmart when we start doing the occupancy limitation. It's tough enough with, you can see the Amazon packages that are being delivered. It's tough on these small businesses. And so I think that we just got to have that right balance, and I believe that should be done at the community level. And I think Brookings has done what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you very much. Louise, in your opinion, has the city made the correct decision on the COVID mandates, and what could the legislature or governor have done differently?
I believe that Brookings has made the right call and the right decision with a mask mandate. I do believe we need to continue to have conversation with our small business owners as well as our city councilors to make sure that there is a right balance between our city ordinance because small businesses are so deeply affected. At the state level, I think there definitely is a lot that could have happened in hindsight, but I'm not interested in talking about that. I'm interested in thinking forward and what we can do with the next legislative session with appropriations and budgeting. So I do think that the city is making the right call and listening to our.
Okay, Larry Tiedemann.
Well, I think, and I truly believe in local control. I think this local decision makers have the best handle on it. I feel that our governor made the right decision. She predicted back in March and April that if we could hold things flat so that our medical professionals could get geared up, the hospitals and et cetera, she said that we would have a spike this fall, which we're seeing. We're also seeing it because kids went back to school and the university started up again. So we brought in a number of people from across the country back to the state. I support the mask concept. I'm not protecting me, I'm protecting my fellow citizens of Brookings. I think that as a business, I'd like to see where we're at and stay there, not go to the phase where we lock down all the businesses till Christmas. I think very positively that Brookings can make it through. But again, I've had too many close friends that have been impacted by this coronavirus. Our hope is that we have a vaccine and that we can go back to a new normal.
Okay, thank you very much. And now Bill Adamson, has the city made the correct decision in its COVID mandates, and should the legislature or governor done something differently? Bill?
Well, I think I'd have to, as the other people have responded saying that they support what Brookings has done, I would have to agree with that. Until we have a vaccine that we can have substantial community immunity from the COVID, we're probably going to have to use things like mask policies and testing and contact tracing to kind of hold the spread of this disease under control. I mean, the problem is if it gets out of control, you overwhelm the medical system, and we run out of ICU beds and so forth. I mean, then you are having to look at a possibility of shutting down the economy, and we really don't want to do that. Okay, if we just use some very simple proactive measures, we can avoid a very, very costly measure of shutdown where you're going to cause a lot of unemployment. A lot of businesses will probably go out of business. Their income will be severely damaged. Yes, we are seeing that predicted increase of COVID infections in the fall. I mean, the county, Brookings County has a average daily case rate is probably as high or higher than Minnehaha County. And so I think, yes, the city did do the right thing. And the thing with it is you want to stop the spread so that it doesn't cause more serious damage to the economy and the health of people. I mean, really, if you have that mask policy, you're not going to get as many people infected. You're not going to have many deaths, and so we're also saving lives when we do this, and we have to take that into account. So we look at the big picture. You know, the minor inconvenience of wearing masks and doing social distancing is really fairly minor. Looking at the more extreme possibilities of like a total economic shutdown. That's what you absolutely want to avoid.
The next question I have for everyone, thank you all for your answers, by the way. The next question is also a COVID-related one. The state of South Dakota has $1.2 billion in federal COVID aid. Are you pleased with the way the legislature is spending that? What would you change in that plan? Maybe testing and tracing. I don't think that's in that equation. As I understand it, there's $400 million for small business, $40 million for nonprofits. Are we spending that money in the right place? Let me start with you, Bill.
Well, I would agree. I think that we need to invest in some of that CARES Act money invested in proactive policies to stop the spread. I think not only should we do testing and contact tracing. We also should probably make sure that we have adequate supply of PPE for the medical professionals and teachers, because we don't, people shouldn't have to risk their lives to go in and do their job. And I think that would be a very good use of those funds. I think another thing is, we're the only one of the, I think there's only one other state that didn't okay that $400 supplemental unemployment insurance money, and we could use that CARES money for that. I mean, and the reason why that's important, well, you have a lot of people who are suffering because they've lost their job because of no fault of their own. It's just simply the circumstances of the COVID crisis and the layoffs that have occurred. And so if you do that supplemental insurance benefit, that not only helps those families that are out of work who are struggling, but it's also going to help a lot of the businesses in South Dakota, because they're going to spend that money, and that's going to become revenue for those state businesses, and so it'll minimize the negative impact that this COVID crisis has had on business income. And I think those are some very proactive things that you could do to minimize the damage from this COVID infection.
Good. Larry Tiedemann, what's your take on how the legislature is spending that federal COVID aid?
Well, thank you for the question, Don. And again, I think based on what I've seen with the numbers, it was actually 1.4 billion that they put out there. So a lot of those dollars were used for the protective equipment and for testing. The 875 or 900 million that was put out went to the businesses to help them recover, went to K-12 education, it went to nursing homes, it went to a number of different places. K through 12 got 75 million, $500 per student. So there's dollars that were put out locally to help in testing as well. I think there was 20 million that was set aside just to go to testing of student athletes, because that's an additional cost that universities aren't ready for. I think the next step is that since it's been put out there, the next legislative body needs to look at what is the impact of where those dollars went. What difference did it make? Did it save businesses? Did it help separate people at the school system so we have fewer numbers? I'm more looking at, okay, what difference did it make as we went forward? So with that, I would say I think they did it right, but we need to then follow up and see what difference it made.
Louise Snodgrass, has the legislature done the right thing in allocating that money? 1.2, 1.4. I said 1.5 the other day, and I think that might have been a little high. Anyway, so it's more than $1 billion, as they say.
Right. Yes, I do think that there was a lot of critical thinking that went into the allocation of the CARES Act. What I am critical about is the $5 million that was put into a tourism ad and the tourism priority that Kristi Noem had. I'm not necessarily sure that that was the right use of funds. I think that could have been used to add to the small business fund, for the startup fund, or even to our healthcare system that is seeing a spike in cases. I am also interested in following up with how those funds are being used and what that impact is. Hearing from some nonprofits that they haven't received the funds, and I am hearing as well that they aren't using them yet. So I think it would be very critical that the legislator follows up with how the money is being used, and a special study just to see what the impact is. But I am very critical of the $5 million used for.
Well, Tim Reed, one of the four people on my screen actually got to vote on that. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how that all came down.
Yes. Well, no, I think the legislature did do a good job, and I think the governor has done a good job with the money before that. I think what needs to be realized is that we need some flexibility with this. And I appreciate that the governor came to us, but earlier, she was making sure that the federal requirements were being taken care of, and what can we do right now for COVID. So I think it was a good deal then for the legislature to have their vote. I think we need to understand that there was $20 million put in for testing for the state, $20 million for it. And when we were talking about this issue, and over time here, I've been in contact with health officials in the city, and their real testing issue just had to do with really the global supply issue, the testing supply. They felt that yes, they were limited on what they had for testing. but it didn't have to do with the money. It had to do with the global supply chain, just getting product here that they could use. It's also good to know that, or I think important to know that there was $5 million, given to universities, our state universities, to make sure they could do even more testing. That's how important it was to get them started, make sure that students were able to continue, with their studies. And then another $5 million for private. So I think, there was a lot of money put into testing. And when I spoke to university officials and when I spoke to healthcare officials, they said, we've got enough, money for testing. It's just more about the supply. And the same goes with PPE. They were comfortable. The school system, there was a little concern about how much money the school system was receiving. And then the federal government came down with that guideline. And I think they were able to give $500 more each per student. And the governor did that within a day. And so I think that was a good allocation of money. So I haven't heard from the school systems after that. I think that they're doing fine with money. There's still a lot of unknowns. I really think the $400 million that was for business was very important to get done. Now, it's targeted. I think some businesses are doing okay. Some businesses are struggling. And so this was a good way of making sure those businesses can stay alive and or stay in business and keep their employees, keep employees on the payroll. And so I do think that it was a good use of the money, and letting the legislature, have a say in on some of the money, I think, from the governor was also very good.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to transition a little bit here, also 2 minutes to respond. Agriculture is the largest industry in South Dakota, and the growth of agriculture is frequently seen as key to the growth of the state. What are your plans as a legislator for helping to grow agriculture, or for that matter, any other business sector in the state? Let's start with Louise Snodgrass.
Yeah, I am first and foremost kind of an ag-based gal. And it's not a traditional agriculture background, but I am very involved in the local food scene, and I see it's very important to bolster our local food systems. We've seen in March and April how incredibly important our local producers are when there's no meat on the Hy-Vee shelves. It is important to support our producers here in South Dakota. I also think it is very valuable for value-added products here in South Dakota. We're seeing the Prairie Aquatech, that amazing facility, is a great economic boost to South Dakota. Ethanol is a great economic boost, and we have the I-29 corridor. So I'm really interested in creating more value-added products ranging from fish food down to an agritourism farm.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Larry Tiedemann. Larry, tell us about agriculture, its growth, and the growth of our state.
Well, thank you, Don. And agriculture has really been my whole life. I grew up on a dairy farm, milked cows for 40 years. And so I know the toils of going through that, but it was too small of a farm to continue. I see that agriculture, we need to take advantage of our strengths. We have the capability to raise livestock in this area. We also have the potential to capture more value from the ethanol industry. Been working with Representative Reed on a new facility in Brookings that would focus on capturing that oil out of that and turning it into other products that could be used locally, like at 3M or in the plastics world. So we don't have to bring in a tanker of oil from Oklahoma to do product development in this state. I see that as being one of the key parameters that we have to do, is to look at those value-added projects.
And let's move to Bill Adamson. Bill, how would you grow agriculture or any other business sector in the state to the benefit of South Dakota?
Well, I agree. Agriculture is a very important component of our state GDP. However, the largest industries are the finance, insurance, and real estate industries, government sector, and education, healthcare services, and then ag is fourth in size, and then manufacturing is about fifth in size. But obviously, agriculture is the roots of South Dakota, and it's a very important component of our GDP, and it's really necessary to help expand agriculture. And I think a lot of what everybody's been talking about is what we call value-added agriculture. So rather than just simply growing the grain and shipping it out of state, and then somebody else creates economic value by processing the raw materials, we should process those in the state. And so obviously things like ethanol, I mean, that's obviously critical. I mean, development of the dairy systems, that's been, you know, and the fact that we have SDSU plays a big role. They played a big role in attracting Bell Brands into South Dakota. I think the other thing we have to look at is we're looking at a lot of precision agriculture. That's going to take a lot of internet connectivity and bandwidth to be able to run that. And I don't think we have that good of that type of infrastructure in the rural parts of the state. I think you need to improve those rural parts of the state. That'll increase the productivity for the ag from the precision ag. And we're really moving from a brick and mortar type of economy into a digital economy. And so I think developing that infrastructure is going to be a real critical factor in helping agriculture become more efficient and be able to survive. I mean, obviously agriculture has to deal with global markets, and they have some very tough international competitors, and the more efficient they become, the more likely our farms are going to survive.
Very good, thank you. And now Tim Reed. Tim, what are your plans as a legislator to grow the agricultural sector in the state?
Well, the first thing is to look back at the last session, and a group of legislators got together that I was included with, and we procured $1 million for the Bioprocessing Institute. And it's a great program. Now it's a combination of SDSU and the School of Mines. And so we've got two schools working together that have great things that they both can do, and they knew they had to share resources to get this done. So it's going to be a great project. And yes, it's about ag. You know, it's about increasing the commodity prices. But that also, once you're going to the value-added processing, you're going to get other jobs. And so we're going to create jobs that, you know, someone in the university system is looking at. It's ag-based, but yet it's a technology. And so that's what this is all about. So we can grow the ag economy through a bioprocessing institute, but we're also going to grow the number of jobs we have in South Dakota. We're going to be doing that work here in South Dakota. And so that's what I think is really important for us in this upcoming session. We're going to need to be able to get out there and fight to make sure that we can get this Bioprocessing Institute started. And then we will really see, we'll hope to see something like Prairie Aquatech, or the idea of making plastics, you know, firing off companies 2-3 a year.
Okay, thank you very much. Time now to move on to our next question. Thank you all very much for abiding by the 2-minute rule once again. Appreciate your adherence to that. Gun control is a key issue each election year in South Dakota. And there are two particular issues that I think are important. What's your position on red flag laws? Now, those are laws that allow a family member or law enforcement to petition a court to actually remove weapons, firearm from somebody. And what's your position on universal background checks? Let's start with Larry Tiedemann.
Well, I'm a Second Amendment person. I believe that we should have the right to carry a gun. I do not believe that we should have the right to carry a gun into places that you shouldn't, i.e. the university system, because that's not your home. And that was put in place really during in the Revolutionary War, because people didn't want the English soldiers to stay in their house with their guns. And so that's how it really got started, that you have the right to carry the gun, but you really don't have the right to bring it into somebody else's home. I don't support the red flag. I think there's got to be a justified reason why you would confiscate the gun. I think that we should have the right to bear arms, but I think we need to be responsible citizens when we do these things.
Okay, thank you. Bill Adamson, red flag laws and universal background checks, other gun rights issues.
Well, I would agree with Larry. I mean, I believe everybody has the right to own guns, but I believe in responsible gun ownership at the same time. I mean, we have to follow the Heller decision. I mean, the Heller decision does grant individuals right to have guns. The question is now how do we define as a improper use of gun ownership? As far as the red flag laws go, I mean, I can certainly see the case to have intervention where somebody is suicidal or extremely violent, you know, but there has to be a due process. You have to be able to go to a judge and allow that person to defend their right to gun ownership. I mean, I just don't think you come in and seize the guns from them right away unless there's an immediate problem. Somebody has threatened suicide or something like that. But again, you'd have to have the court system involved where that person get their guns back. As far as universal background checks, I think that we need to tighten up some of the laws. There's a lot of loopholes out there where people are buying guns at gun shows with no background checks. I mean, I think you need to have background checks to make sure that you don't have criminals buying guns. I mean, that's and people who are prohibited from gun ownership. You really have to have some type of societal control over guns. It's not a universal right. Like free speech is not a universal right itself. I mean, you can't slander people, you can't libel people. So so there has to be responsible gun ownership as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Tim Reed, we're talking about laws for gun ownership, red flag laws, and universal background checks. What's your position on that?
When in general with guns, I think it's very important that everybody has the right to protect themselves. I think that's what is important, and so I'll always support that. But it is important to have the background checks for the safety of everybody in the community. So universal background checks are very important. Red flag laws, I'd be real critical of them. I know that last session that there was one proposed, but it didn't make it out of the Senate. I was kind of looking forward to having the discussion about it, just to find out, to what extent. I think it's got to be, you really have to prove a lot before you would take somebody's gun, because you're taking the right away from them to be able to protect themselves. So I think, when we've had past issues, gun issues, I believe in concealed carry, but I don't have any trouble with having to get a permit if you're going to have a concealed carry. I think we have to be really wise about our gun laws so people can protect themselves, and yet we're also protected from those that maybe should not be carrying a gun concealed.
Okay, and Louise Snodgrass, what's your position on gun control, in particular the red flag laws and universal background checks?
I think it's incredibly important to have background checks when it comes to gun ownership. I think there is responsible gun ownership, and I think that is very present in South Dakota. But we saw in June a large presence of individuals on Main Street with their assault rifles, just standing there with their bandanas, and that is frightening. And it is, although they have the right to protect themselves, I don't necessarily believe in the right to intimidate others. And so I do think it is important to have background checks and to have concealed carry permits and to have gun permits. And I think we do need to tighten up our gun laws here in South Dakota.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to throw out a bonus question. I feel in some respects kind of like a game show host here. So I'm going to throw out a bonus question. I'm going to start with Bill off the top of my head. Meth, we're on it. South Dakota spent $1 million, actually out of state, to have that campaign launched. How do you feel about that? Is that successful? What are we doing here?
Well, I think there was good intentions on trying to address the meth issue. I'm not sure how effective it was. I think the money would be better spent on addressing meth through, counseling on drug abuse. Trying to help people wean off of meth. I mean, programs to intervention programs to help people get rid of their dependency on drugs. I mean, I think that would be my preference as far as spending funds. I mean, I think we'd find those to be a much more effective use of resources.
Louise Snodgrass, meth, we're on it.
I think it was a failed campaign. I think the money that was used could have been used with a local PR firm. Instead, they went out of state. I also would like to understand the effectiveness of the campaign. If you go onto the website, the press that is the most recent press is from 2019. So I wonder how up to date they are keeping that program. I do think that we need to start considering meth as a medical issue as opposed to just a societal issue. I do think that that money could have been used to be put into treatment facilities that could have treated individuals with medication as opposed to counseling services or just a hotline.
Tim Reed, what's your take on the Meth We're On It campaign?
Well, meth is critical for us to get a handle on, and I think it's something that is because of COVID that we kind of lost the discussion on. So, these programs, though, I don't think a catchy phrase, as much as they tried to have a catchy phrase, we've done this for several other kind of programs, ideas, and they fail because a lot of times you can make fun of these things. When the government puts it out, it's great to make fun of. So I don't think a catchy phrase is the way of doing this. There's a lot of hard work that needs to be done to really make sure that we get meth off the street. We have to make sure we're going after the dealers, and we need to figure out a way that we treat the addicts, with actual mental health care instead of, jailing them all the time. So we got to figure that portion out of how can we increase the access to health care for them, for them to solve their problem. It's tough. Meth is, really grabs people and they can't let go of it. And so we need to figure that end out of it as much, as we have to also continue to push on making sure that we get the dealers.
Larry Tiedemann, the state spent $1 million telling us that meth, we're on it. And what's your take? How do you feel about that?
Well, it was a catchy phrase that got a lot of attention, not just in South Dakota, but across the country. I was in Indianapolis when it came out, and everybody at this meeting was talking about it. Now, that didn't get the problem solved, but meth is a bad problem. When you look at the women's prison in South Dakota, 40% of them there are on meth. Now, could we have done better utilizing a local entity like Teen Challenge? Teen Challenge helps young men turn around and helps them get off meth. It's a 16-month program. A short time period trying to take people off meth or any addiction doesn't work. And I think they've proven here that our recidivism rate is much lower going through Teen Challenge than going through prison. So I would like to have seen the money go to us.
Thank you very much. Our next question concerns ballot initiatives. In November, South Dakota voters will be asked to decide Amendment A, which essentially legalizes marijuana for recreational use, and Initiated Measure 26, which allows marijuana for medical use. How would you recommend voters decide on these issues? Let's start with Tim Reed.
Well, I'm not so sure I could recommend how voters should vote. I think that's up to them. They need to take the information in and make the best choice. Voter initiative items are really good. We've done them in South Dakota. I'm proud that we have them here in South Dakota. On Amendment A, first thing is, this does not belong in the Constitution. This is the Constitution is the overarching how are we going to run the government, not specifically that we're going to allow people, to purchase marijuana legally. As far as recreational marijuana, I have a lot of issues with it. I think that we have enough drug issues. I believe it's a gateway drug. We also, it does cause more crime problems. We've seen a lot of studies come out from other states that it has caused crime problems. But the first thing is, let's not put it in the Constitution. Medical marijuana, I understand that. I understand that there are people that, are at, end of life, or they're having some very chronic issues that marijuana can help them cope with it. It's a little strange because, when they say it's medical marijuana, you get it prescribed. You don't know how much you're actually getting of the THC, so I'd rather see if we could get to having the pharmaceutical companies actually provide that, so it could be actual dosages that we're dealing with. But I understand if somebody's, especially if someone's dying of cancer, that's okay that they are allowed to get some marijuana if it really does give them some relief.
Louise Snodgrass, 2 marijuana issues on the ballot. How do you feel about those? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, I feel like it is the legislator's job to make sure that if those bills are passed by the people, if there is a majority vote, that there is some critical thinking going into how the bills are written, and to understand that we have a large incarceration rate of individuals who are in our prison systems due to marijuana and marijuana ingestion. So how are we going to expunge those records? I think from my understanding of reading those measures, it's up to the legislator to decide for the next 2 years. They have a 2-year gap to decide how that bill will go into place. So I urge the legislators to seriously consider the large amount of incarcerated individuals who are in our prison systems due to marijuana.
Very good. Larry Tiedemann. discussing medical marijuana and recreational marijuana as ballot initiatives. How do you weigh in on those?
Well, again, I agree with Representative Reed. There's no way that that should be Amendment A should pass and put it in the Constitution. We're still living with 5 cents a mile to travel out and back from Pier one time at 5 cents a mile. That's in the Constitution, and we can't get it changed. IM 26, the recreational, if you look at that, there's actually, that's the medical. You look at that one, there's 95 sections in that. I think I'm the only one that has read all 95 sections. And there's a lot of things that need to be clarified in there. There are not a lot of specific things except the first 20 sections talk about what you can't do as a law enforcement and as a state. And then you go into that you can have a registration card. If you lose your registration card, it costs you some dollars to get it replaced. You have to identify the dispensary. You can only have a minimum of 3 plants. So if you plant 3 and 1 dies, you're breaking the law. Amendment B, I think that we have enough gambling within. It doesn't just impact Deadwood, but it's every casino that's located on the Indian reservations. I don't believe that I would support it. I also argued with the prime sponsor of that bill because he said there was only one way that you could do it. You had to get petition signers to change that law. And he chose the way I was trying to do it for Yankton. So for that reason, I'm a no.
Wow, I wasn't even going to bring up the Deadwood gambling thing, but hey, that's fair. That's fair game. I could even bring up the Yankton gambling initiative if you'd like. Anyway, let me ask Bill to talk about the marijuana issues that are on the ballot. What are your thoughts on those, Bill? Bill Adamson.
Well, on the initiated measure 26, a good friend of mine died from cancer, and he just had a video post, Dr. Rick Holmes, and he used medical marijuana to control the pain from his cancer. And he said that he liked it better. It was more effective than using opioids to control the pain. And I would agree. I think that anybody who is at an end of life stage, or if you have kids who have, have epilepsy and medical marijuana is the best way of treating the epilepsy, they should have the right to use this in a medical sense. And again, what the problem is you now have to have state dispensaries set up, and so at least you would have a regulation system where you can control the quality, and the quantities of the drug being sold. As far as the constitutional amendment A, I do have a problem with it being a constitutional amendment. I think that might be the wrong approach, and it maybe should have been an initiated measure on its own. But at least the concept of recreational possession, I would prefer that there be no marijuana use or drug or alcohol abuse. And we tried to ban alcohol back during the Prohibition period, and it caused a huge increase in organized crime. And we see the same thing from illegal drug use. I mean, we have this huge organized crime network that supplies the black market. And so now just because you make something illegal doesn't mean the use of this particular good will stop. And that's the problem we face. And so the question is are the costs of marijuana prohibition, are those greater than the benefits? And I think that's a tough issue to settle. But I'd like to see marijuana decriminalized and allow them to buy them through the state dispensaries. That way you can control that black market. And I think that'd be the direction to go, but I'm not sure the constitutional amendment's the best choice.
Very good. Well, thank you all very much. Those are very divergent points of view on those issues. I'm going to just do a hand poll here. If there was sports betting in Deadwood, would you vote on the Vikings? Would you put money on the Vikings to win?
The Seahawks.
Okay. Wow, now we have a controversy here, don't we? Wow. Well, I'm going to move to our wrap up here. And what I'd like you to do is take 2 minutes and tell the listeners, both the live listeners and those who are tuning in to the recording, tell us why we should vote for you. what are you bringing to the table? What's going to make your candidacy make a difference for District 7? And let me start with Louise.
Okay, hi. I would say that a lot of people have noticed I'm not a traditional candidate. I am young and I am female presenting and I'm working class and I don't necessarily have the official public service experience. But over the years, I've collaborated and consulted with a variety of projects and programs within our community. I am in pace with our community. It's hard not to find me in downtown Brookings. I'm usually there. I've grown up with the values of our community. I was a Brookings High School graduate, and I celebrate Brookings' mission to create a safe, sustainable, and inclusive community where all can bring their dreams. And I want to champion that at the state level. I want all people to feel like they can bring their dreams to the entire state of South Dakota. We are facing a very crucial election. It is not a traditional year. We have a huge pandemic that we're facing. We have a public health crisis. We have a police brutality crisis as well. And with the health and well-being of our country, our communities, and our neighboring communities on the line, your vote matters now more than ever. So I ask that you cast your vote for Louise.
Very good. Thank you, Louise. Larry Tiedemann, why should I vote for you as well as those listening?
Well, first off, Don, I want to congratulate all of the candidates that are running. It takes a lot of initiative and everybody brings different strengths to the table. I figure my strength is one. My wife, Gail, and I have raised 2 children in this community. Both of them graduated from the Brookings school system. We are very pleased with our community. We love our community. It's a great place to raise a family. Because of the COVID situation and what is happening, there was a number of folks that asked me to jump back in because after serving on appropriations, the committee that puts together the budget for the state. And I went through this in 2008, 2009, and 2010. And South Dakota was one of the states that rebounded faster than our surrounding states. And so that knowledge I felt was something that I could contribute back. My life has been service. I'm on the Boys and Girls Club corporate board. I work with Yankton, Moody County, and Brookings. And that's helping those kids that need us the most. I haven't just gone into retirement, but I've stayed connected. And I would love and be very humbled to serve again as state representative for District 7.
Thank you. Bill Adamson, would you tell us, please, why we should vote for you? What are you bringing to the legislature for us?
Well, I think I bring a moderate voice to the legislature, and one of the things I would criticize the legislature for is that I saw a lot of very extreme measures being brought up, things like transgender bathroom bills and recruiting gun advocates to move to South Dakota, and I just don't think that's good public policy. I mean, those are kind of extremist positions. That really doesn't, they don't really help the majority of South Dakotans. And I think we need to be really focused on how do we improve the economy for the average South Dakotan. And the thing that I'm worried about is that this pandemic and the recession that we're suffering, this is going to persist well into 2021. I mean, we did see higher state revenues for 2020, but a lot of that was driven by the federal CARES Act spending. And so we're probably looking at a serious revenue declines in 2021, and how we deal with that, I think, is a real critical issue. I mean, I think we're going to have to be careful not to just come in and cut state employment jobs, particularly in education and other state workers. And because when you raise the unemployment rate, for every 1% increase in unemployment rate, your GDP output falls by 2%. And so you could, by doing that serious of a cut, you could cause the recession to become even deeper in the state. And so, I think we have to start looking at using reserve funds to maybe offset this, because this is probably, hopefully when we get the vaccine implemented, that we'll be able to start to return the economy around, and we can start the recovery phase. And in the meantime, we shouldn't do a lot of damage to the economy that's going to put a lot of people out of work and cause people to lose a lot of businesses. So I'm a moderate voice, and I think that would be a good voice to have in the legislature.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Bill. And we finish with our incumbent tonight, Tim Reed. Tim, why should I vote for you?
Well, thank you, Don, for moderating this forum. Thank you to all the candidates. Isn't it great how Brookings can get together and actually have a great civil discussion? I've watched that discussion for, like I said, being in public service here for over 17 years. I've spent time in this community, and I understand what this community is about. We are a very diverse, moderate community, and I understand that. When we were going through figuring out how to rebrand this community, I was part of that activity, and we saw it. We saw it in the surveys that we had. The idea that people thought this was a good place to bring your dreams, and we're an open, inclusive community. And I like going to the legislature and saying, this is Brookings, and this is what we stand for. But when you're out there, you need people that can get things done for their community and for the state. And I've done a lot of work with sexual assaults, helping victims, finding laws that can help. You need somebody that knows how to get that kind of work done. We were working quite hard this year on the issue that the REAs wanted to stop municipal electricities or public power from growing. And it took a lot of work to make sure that didn't happen, because it would just increase the rates for the electric rates for people in Brookings. And so what I bring to the table is that experience. I know how to go out there, and I know how to get those things done. And that's why I'm asking for the citizens of Brookings, all of District 7, to vote for me, because I want to get back out there and I want to get this work done.
All righty. Well, I want to thank all of our candidates tonight. This has really been an outstanding forum, and I appreciate your candid opinions and the diversity of opinions that we've had on our panel this evening. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you at home for joining us tonight, and thanks to the Brookings Chamber of Commerce for making this program possible, as we've met the District 7 representative candidates this evening. We appreciate your viewing this program if you're tuning in at a later date. And remember, get out and vote. Tuesday, November 3rd is Election Day. I'm Don Norton. Have a great evening.